Oh my God, it's been so long. I forgot what to do when you pointed me, Ann. It's been so long.
Figure it out, chick.
I can't. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Atomic Mass Transmissions Live. I'm excited to be back with you all after a few months hiatus while I was working on lots of other things. Dallas was kind enough to step in and pick up the Tuesdays as well as the Wednesdays. Well, internally, we were working on a lot of cool stuff for the rest of the year. But I'm back, and we're going to be painting Electro for my return, which is great because there's only two colors. I might have forgotten how to do this. We're going to find out, and it'll be fine. It'll be fine. So let's just dive right in, and let's get going on this Max Dillon fella here. So, of course, we started out like normal. We've got him all in our Zenith Prime. We're just going to do some washes, and let's see if I can actually get this man done in an hour today, and maybe that'll work and maybe it won't, but you know what? I feel ambitious. I feel like we got to try it.
I've started the clock.
How dare you? Don't hold me to my braggadocio ways.
You already spent the first 60 seconds.
I know. You're just trying to get back at me because I refuse to follow your pointing instructions. That's why. I know. We all know. All right, we got to make sure that his glove stays not green because that's going to be yellow. Because if there's one thing about Electro's costume, it's that the man doesn't pick a lot of colors. It's just green and yellow. His booties and his glovies are yellow. His weird little lightning bolt mask is yellow. I could have done the other head, so I don't know if we've talked about this a little bit, but Mr. Electro here does have two head options. So you can either do them with the classic Sinister 616 kind of like lightning bolt starfish mask, which is just weird, but it's weird in a way that I love. Alternatively, we did include the bald head, like with the lightning bolt tattoos on his face, which I want to say has been used in the 616, but might have been Ultimates first, maybe. I don't know when that little like costume change first appeared, but so you have options. You can do either or I suppose if you wanted to be really spicy, you could take that face and maybe do it more like the Sony Pictures Amazing Spider-Man Electro. I guess if you wanted to do a little work, the options are endless. The only limit to your hobby is you. And boy, don't I know that. All right. Spider-Man's villains in green. Well, because, it contrasts against his blue and red, right? So he's got the blue and the red suit. That's the good guy colors. Yellow, green, purple. Those are all traditionally villain colors in like cartoons and comic books and stuff. So you get a lot of the green. And that's before you get into all of the different weird like rules about how old comic book printers, which colors they could print effectively, and why the Hulk was green and not the gray he was supposed to be, and why he's got purple pants. There's a lot of like unintentional things that we now see as very traditional, which is kind of funny once you start getting into it. But yeah, for whatever reason, we've really identified, green and purple. They're kind of bad guy colors in our superhero art. I guess our glove goes up to here, so we'll just do that. That's fine. Boop, boop, boop. No two threat. Because we did show off Shocker today. I know there was a large amount of speculation that Shocker would be a 2 threat. He is not. I think we talked a little bit about this during the Adepticon. I want to say it was with Professional Casual, and we were sitting down with them and chatting about things, and we talked a little bit about threat values, and the question was kind of like, what's really hard to balance for? 6 threats really, obviously we've seen some erratas to 6 threats and higher, and which ones are, where do you find the problems come up more often than not in the game. And I think I surprised folks a little bit when I said, well, the high threat characters are actually not that hard to balance for in terms of knowing what's not enough, right? Like, it can be tricky to make them. The challenge with high threat characters is that every character you can't take in Crisis Protocol, right, is 2 actions you don't get. It's an activation that you miss out on. And so we know traditionally from all these games that utilize alternating activations and activation counts and stuff like Crisis Protocol, activation superiority and action economy superiority is huge. And it's one of those things that can really quickly unbalance a game and create a situation where, you're incentivized to take the weakest characters, the most numerous amount of weak characters as possible, because they net you the most benefit in the game, and it doesn't really matter that they're weak, because at the end of the day, every character gets X number of actions, and therefore those actions have enough value, right? A 2 threat can, conceivably, without a special rule limiting it otherwise, can absolutely contest a point just like a 6 threat character can, or a 5 threat character, or 4 threat character. So, on the high end, the challenge becomes less about, what makes that character too weak, right? It's very easy to create a quote unquote super safe high threat character, because you can very easily identify, okay, well, if they're just average, or they don't do anything particularly exceptionally well, right? If they have no kind of action economy, no way to hit above the weight class of 2 characters below them, they're going to struggle. So in that way, the challenge with those higher threat characters really becomes that fine line of pushing them to the point that they actually are worth their threat value and they can compete equitably with a list that has more characters. And obviously there, we have, like everyone, we have varying levels of success. Sometimes we do pretty well out of the gate. Sometimes, we turn out that we went a little too far in one direction, and that character becomes slightly oppressive. But the reality of the situation is that, it's easy to undertune or to prevent a high threat character from being exceptionally overpowered, right? The challenge is, how do you make a high threat character that isn't underpowered because of the difference in action disparity and activation stuff? So you push higher. You have to figure out how to give them effectively, 3 actions worth of stuff to do, and yet not be so oppressive that they blow out lower threat teams, the middle range, and all that stuff. 2 threat characters are the ones that are the worst. They are the hardest characters to account for, because again, you run into that situation of, because you can take anybody or anything you want in Crisis Protocol on your team, in your roster and in your squad, without proper monitoring, without very careful safeguards in place, there's a world in which you could just play 10 2-threat characters. And what we know from previous experience with other games and seeing how those kind of metas and everything else can evolve, that list becomes exceptionally hard for anyone to deal with if it's not balanced very carefully. So with all of that kind of in mind, the idea that the 2-threat characters are actually more dangerous to the game environment than the high-threat characters, if not handled appropriately. We're pretty careful about how many 2 threats we add, how those 2 threats function. They're always very, very difficult to balance against. You'll often see that 2 threats sacrifice some kind of significant game economy, right? Like they don't get to contest. They don't get to pick up objectives. They are like a Wong, and maybe they can do all of the objectives, but they're just categorically weak. They're only support pieces. They become highly specialized to do one thing and one thing only. Because if they can do too much, and you can just take them all, then the difference between a 2-threat and a 3-threat, or a 2-threat and a 4-threat, starts to become unimportant once you begin to just factor in, okay, well, but with extra characters on the field, I can now out-activate my opponent, I can out-action them, I can bum rush points at the end of the round because they just can't respond to me enough. And, you know, you can obviously make every 2-threat character 1 defenses across the board with 2 health, and they're super easy to remove, but obviously we already know that that's not balanced too, right? Our goal isn't perfect balance, but our goal is imperfect, perfect balance. So we know right away if we're creating characters that are defense 1s across the board with 2 health, well, those characters aren't balanced against anything in the game. All this to say, you know, 2 threats are certainly important to the game, and they have a place, but they also have to be treated with extreme care because they, more than anything else, have the potential to really skew the game environment in a way that we desperately do not want to see in Crisis Protocol itself. So, Toad does 2 things very well. He does pick things up and get struck by lightning, yes. But only if you have Halle Berry on the table. But, you know, just case in point, think about all those characters that people talk about being indispensable or required in some way for list building or for certain affiliations, right? And Toad is one of those ones that you see in affiliation, out of affiliation, because he does something that the game really, really wants and needs. He does it exceptionally well, and the 2-threat value means that despite maybe being squishier and everything else, he can more than make up for it. And so it's all those kinds of considerations that mean that you're not going to see, you know, you're not going to see 2 threats with any kind of like major frequency that you would any other threat level, because the game can only support so many. So it's one of those values as well, more than any of the other ones, 3, 4, 5, 6 even, where we have to be very judicious about when and where we're going to utilize that threat value. And because we're very focused internally on these games being accurate representations of the characters and making sure that you're living out kind of that Marvel, you know, that Marvel Universe dream, when you put Shocker on the table, he needs to feel like Shocker, he needs to function like Shocker does. Can we accomplish that with a 2-threat? You know, with all the limitations that a 2-threat brings to the table, with all of the game considerations and everything else? And the answer to that typically is no, right? Especially when you're talking about somebody like Shocker. Is not the most powerful character ever, but he's gone toe-to-toe with Spider-Man. He causes Spider-Man problems. He's been a significant-ish force at various times in the history of the Spider-Man, you know, lore and comics and everything else. So is he a 2-threat? Maybe in, you know, maybe in some comparison to like everyone else. But also, there's somebody out there who, you know, really enjoys Shocker as a character and wants to see Shocker feel like Shocker and do all the things that we've seen, and that kind of means that Shocker's not a 2. But it's a combination of different issues, right? Like, can you create the characters feel and make them function the way that you want them to function at the threat level is a huge first check. And if the answer is no, then you have to find a different threat level. And obviously going up is way easier than going down, because again, the higher you go, the more you get to do, the more space you have to work with, because the character just has to do more to make up for the fact that it's 1 character versus potentially 2 characters. The lower you go, more limited your options become, the more specialized you have to be in order to not imbalance the game just through your sheer existence within it. He does come with an alternate head, so we talked briefly about this at the start, but he's got his starfish head like I put on here just because I think it's so goofy it has to be done. And then he comes with the bald head with the lightning tattoos, which I couldn't remember which comic run it appeared in first, if it was Ultimates or if it was just a alternate costume from the 616 like normal Spider-Man continuity. But he does have that one. He does have that option as well. So, and with that head you could do a lot of things. You could just paint it like that one. You could not worry about the lightning bolt tattoos and just do a normal head. So something more along the lines of what we see in, the Sony movies, Amazing Spider-Man or No Way Home. Any of those could do it as well. But we definitely wanted to make sure that people could, showcase and have in their collections the iconic looks of these characters. That really solidified when we decided to fully dive in on classic Vulture, despite our initial worries about could we make classic Vulture in a way that was compelling and interesting and not just an old man in pajamas. And we had a lot of discussion about that internally and how to make it work, and the sculpting team and engineers knocked it out of the park, and that Vulture is every bit classic Vulture, but done in a way that is very cool and compelling and makes a really awesome miniature on the table. So, Electro Starfish hat, it was. And honestly, I never really liked the starfish hat looking thing in the comics, but the miniature has grown on me immensely since we were working on it. And I don't know if that's because I had to live with it day in and day out for a long time like everyone else did, or if it just works better in 3 dimensions than you would think it would, but I really have come around on it, and I thoroughly enjoy it now. Got our basis colors here. Anne is making big sigh noises over in the corner, so it's got to be going well.
I'm sorry. I forget to breathe sometimes, and then I realize I need to.
Well, all right.
Everybody take your deep breath. Deep,
Noted.
Calming breaths.
Yeah. Don't forget to breathe, people.
It's Dallas in the chat.
Dallas.
We miss you, bud.
Yeah, Dallas, one of the many AMG staffers who did not escape unscathed from the Adepticon yearly con plague. Somehow I missed it. I don't know how. It was pretty amazing. But I watched everyone else drop like flies. And
yeah, I was pretty surprised to come out of there unscathed. The only thing I was scathed by was how dry it was.
Oh yeah, that Chicago winter it's brutal on your Pacific Northwest, like water absorbing skin.
I feel betrayed because I grew up there, and I'm like, it was never like this. I've been so changed.
You have.
Yeah.
Your body's become more of a wet sponge than a dry sponge. It's so used to absorbing all those sweet, sweet moistures. All right. I want a color, not that color, maybe this color. Yeah, Vulture, well, so for those in chat talking about Vulture's youth stealing shenanigans, don't worry, our intrepid art director, Josh Colon, has not let you down when it comes to some of the tactic card ideas and art. So if that is a Vulture storyline you wish to play out, as the previews start rolling, you might see that Josh has got you. He's got you. I just want to make a quick shade wash for this yellow, just to get a bit more depth of color in there. Should have pulled out that noosh. I don't know where the bottle of it is, but that might have worked well for this. Monuments paint, super wash. That in. Working some of the shade color here. I don't know if we'll get to the lightning today or not, but we'll see. See how fast we can go. And the question you have to make for yourself is, are you going to paint the yellow lightning or are you going to paint the blue lightning? And that's another inconsistent consistency that we found internally, is that largely good guys or good people's heroes are typically drawn using blue lightning, and villains typically get yellow lightning. But, like all good things, it's not always consistent. So you can definitely find heroes, like say a Storm or a Thor, using yellow lightning, just like you can find an Electro using blue lightning. So the world is really your oyster when it comes to that. It's kind of like whatever you think about. I typically ascribe to the belief that, for the most part, bad lightning is yellow and good lightning is blue. But of course, your miniatures, your hobby, you get to decide how you want to do it. And there is obviously an interesting challenge when you have yellow on his costume and then you're going to do yellow lightning, and you want to make sure that they're distinct and different so it doesn't look like he's wearing lightning, and he's got these cool little lightning bolts coming off his hands. So a slightly bigger challenge from a hobby perspective, if that's the direction you want to go with the yellow lightning. Oh yeah, blue lightning all around to match, like for sure. Electricity is yellow, lightning is blue. Sure. These are all excellent observations, different ways to look at it. Like I said, you'll certainly see both utilized across various things. A lot of the time I think they just choose the lightning color or the electricity color or whatever based on the rest of the composition of the panel. So oftentimes there's a lot of blue or like a blue night sky or something, they'll go with yellow for Thor. I think there's a little bit of artist choice as well. Which color do you like most for these things? All of the fun conversations that we get to have on a daily basis. Should we use this one? I don't think we used this one. Nope, I sure didn't. This, grab a lot of this. So what's it like having that? I don't think I have the coolest job. I have a pretty cool job, but I don't think it's the coolest job. But see, I think everyone here would say that, right? Because you do it day in, day out, and you think about what other people do. I always thought it'd be a pretty awesome job to be a sculptor and engineer and actually have the knowledge and the skills to bring all these amazing minis to life. But I suppose, they're always very excited to get in on play testing and everything else, and so it's kind of, it's whatever's a break from your normal day. I think people typically jump into. But
yeah, I would say that a lot of people get like excited about what other people are doing because it's not what we experience day to day. So I know Andrea's in the chat. I get excited to see what her plans are. All hands is also a great time for us to just like see what everybody's up to.
I mean, at the end of the day, right? That's the coolest bit about the job is the fact that you get to work with so many other creative and just neat people. And you get to watch them create amazing things. You get to work on them, work with them to create the stuff, and kind of takes the whole village to put it all together. And it's fun watching how we'll have those all hand meetings and people will share what they're working on, and you'll have the sculptors will show some sculpts and everyone's like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. And then marketing will come in and they'll show some like photography or some social media stuff that they're doing with finished and painted stuff that the sculptor's working on. The sculptor's like, oh my gosh, it looks so much better. It's so cool, right? You get to watch.
We also show stuff y'all do in the community too, so that's a fun thing that I get to
and then
share for us. And
we do get shown how you all out there in the community are engaging with and painting some of the stuff. And I don't know, it's a neat. I think the part that makes the job super cool is the fact that everything builds on everything else. It's a very collaborative style of, environment and work. And when you're done with something, you're kind of just handing it off to someone else to make even cooler.
Totally.
And so you're never the last step in the line. And I think that's just crazy and in a very neat way. That even the person who you're like, man, I wish I could do what you do. You make these things so amazing. They're looking at somebody else a little bit down the process or even at the end of the process and be like, this person here took my sculpt and made it a work of art. They did this amazing thing with painting. They created a awesome community event out of our games or whatever. So it's a it's a very rewarding and neat experience, and kind of like how Adepticon does every year. We get done, we come back, we're filled with all kinds of con crud, and we're exhausted from nonstop days of both work and play, because that's the best part about those kind of shows, is that you get to do both kind of at the same time. Is it work? Is it play? I don't know. No one knows. Depends on who's asking. Is it your boss, or is it, you? And then you come back and all you want to do is get back to work, because you know that you want to create more cool stuff for everyone to do more cool stuff with. It's not too many experiences in the world where I couldn't be happy to go on stage and get heckled by all my coworkers as I'm trying to make a good impression on hundreds of people in front of me in an auditorium. But I look forward to it every year.
We have so few opportunities.
To make fun of me? That is untrue. Factually incorrect.
That's patently untrue. You're right. But it is fun.
It is fun. Look, I get it. I get it.
He's a great tap dancer, guys.
I'm just glad that they stopped letting you guys bring in things to throw at me.
Oh, I was never a part of that.
I have no doubt that if you could turn it into a game of dodge the rotten tomato, you would. Horrible. It's great. It is truly great. Oh, we have so much fun. But it's also it's a stressful, kind of intense job too, because so many folks out there, their enjoyment, their hobby, their fun, it all kind of rides on the decisions you make. We take that very seriously. As I told some folks over the weekend, nothing frustrates me or makes me madder in the world than seeing things that are supposed to be fun not be fun, especially when it's something you did or you could have done better. And I think that's what motivates a lot of us in the studio to always step it up next time. Even if it was fun this time, we got to make sure that it's fun every other time, that there's more fun to be had, there's more things to do, and we do our darndest to make sure that that's true. We may not always succeed, but it's always our goal. All right. Took a little bit longer on this yellow than I expected to, but I think the back of his noggin is green. Even if it's not, I'm going to make it green so no one can stop me, because it's, this is my show. But it'd be weird if the back of his noggin was yellow and his little starfishy was yellow too. I think that would be too much yellow. We need some contrast in there. So we're going to knock that out.
I'm excited for Dallas to come back and tell everybody about...
Wow, that's just rude.
Well, but to talk about the Worthy.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'm excited for Dallas to come back.
I
haven't been here more than 30 minutes.
All right.
30 minutes, Ann. Already. Just throwing me under that bus.
I already made a big deal about welcoming you back.
No. Don't try to change it. It's all recorded. It's all recorded. It's on the internet. That's forever.
Well,
just so you know.
Dallas appreciates it.
I'm sure he does. I'm sure he does appreciate the fact that you can't wait to get me out of here and get Dallas back. That's fine.
All right. I'll see myself out.
Jeez Louise. You be careful. I'll disappear for another 4 months. I don't need this. This isn't in my contract. I didn't even get the all blue M&Ms from my writer today, so you know what? You're on thin ice, Missy. Thin ice.
I will keep that in mind for next time I guess, in 4 months when we see you again.
That's right, because you ruined it. I just want
Have them
everyone to
ready.
know.
Lucky for you, M&Ms don't go bad, I think. Maybe? I don't know. That's not an official.
Man. I get it. That's fine. Look. There is no replacement for Dallas. I would much rather watch Dallas than me as well. So I'm with you all. He's a wonderful, wonderful man who I've been very pleased to be able to work with for so long and to learn so many of these little painting tricks from. But anything I could show you, he is the one who probably showed me first. So.
Yeah, why blue M&Ms though?
Why not?
Somebody in chat was curious.
Aren't those the crispy ones?
Do you mean the bag that's blue or just M&Ms that are colored
Well,
blue?
so there's colored M&Ms, right? Like obviously there's a bunch of different characters of M&Ms. They're all colored. But each of those M&Ms is also a type of M&M. The yellow M&M is a peanut M&M. The red M&M is a regular M&M. The green M&M, I don't know, but it's a type of M&M. The orange one, I think, is I don't know what the orange one is, actually. I want to say it's like the peanut butter filled one, but that could be wrong.
Yeah, it's like a red packaging thing.
I'm pretty sure that the blue M&M is the crispy,
it's the crispy
center M&M, and those are my favorite M&Ms.
To be honest, and I'm not just telling you this, that is my favorite M&M too.
I don't believe it.
But I don't. Did
and
you
I won't
say
accept
you
it.
Don't believe it.
Correct.
Why not?
Well, because A, you preface it with, I'm going to tell you this and you're not going to believe it. So
Well,
you were
there you
right
go.
there.
Yeah.
But number two, I still wouldn't believe it because I feel like you're trying to placate me.
No, I'm not trying to placate you. I do think those are the best ones, but I never ever see them.
No, I don't know. I don't know if they make them anymore. But crispy M&Ms were the best. Does anyone on the team have a favorite hero they pull for that has made? Oh yeah, everybody's got a number.
We're
number.
Just like y'all, we all have favorites.
I don't. Dallas says he does, but I don't know which one Dallas's is actually. So that's interesting. I can tell you that our art director Josh will not be satisfied until Colleen Wing and Misty Knight make it into the game, and he's been loudly championing those characters for about as long as I can remember. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones that are around the office that get brought up all the time. But honestly, Josh is the loudest of us all, so of course I'd remember his. I do know what you want. That's okay. It was the 4 exclamation points that reminded me of what you want. Yes. Okay, yes. I am aware. I'm just telling you, Dallas, it's too big to work in the game. No matter what your test print says, that is not the right size. I mean, the tiny version of it fits on a base, but that's not what the people want. They want the real version. They want the epic version. I know there's at least 1 or 2 people in the office that are pulling for Batroc the Leaper. That one's got brought up quite a bit. A number of the characters that were on people's wish list, though, we've actually kind of gotten to recently. So I think people have to come up with new versions or new options to champion here, because we've definitely gotten a bit more into the weeds. Hobgoblin's another one that comes up quite a bit, actually. Speaking of late Spider-Man-ish characters, do have a couple of folks in the office who pull for the Hobgoblin. Let's go ahead and quickly dive into the skin tone here. Dallas's mock-up fits comfortably on the base. It is not a, you know, one foot on the base, everything else splayed off. So I mean, I got to give him credit. He's not wrong, but what I think where we disagree is that he's done a very accurate representation of the thing, and I don't think that that's how anybody in the world thinks of the thing. So I contend that it is too small. I mean, Ben Reilly's Scarlet Spider, as I kind of mentioned in an interview, or maybe it was at the keynote roadmap thing. I had the original four issue origin story of his character as Scarlet Spider. I still do. So he's definitely one of those characters that I have a soft spot for, but was not necessarily a character that I think competed at the top of the list in any way. So it was exciting to finally get to him and get to do him in that classic look before, you know, all the weird stuff with him being Chasm and everything else. Mark this down a little bit better. So I'm just going to go in and define the lightning bolt parts slightly more with my green black. All right. Let's see. So let's see what we can do about this lightning. Heavy titanium white, sure. I think the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in really quick, use some heavy titanium white, and just kind of like brighten up this lightning. And this will just make the yellows a bit more poppy, especially since I'm going to try to use some fluorescent yellows. What I would probably do, if this wasn't on stream, is I would just keep him off the lightning and I would use my airbrush to do the lightning, because I think it's much easier and more efficient to get cool kind of glow effects with the airbrush than it necessarily is with the brush, but we're going to do our best today. Just make it work. And the other nice thing about the airbrush is if you finish the base first and then you went in and did the lightning and everything else, you could get that nice little overspray from the airbrush that would kind of act as a little cheatery OSL effect. So you get the little afterglow of all the lightning and everything on the ground. But prevent a lot of that from falling on the mini itself, which I think when OSL or object source lighting, for those who are like, what is he talking about? Basically glow effects. I think they look really cool on display pieces and when they're done exceptionally well. But for me, when I'm doing like gaming miniatures or just miniatures for my own collection, I don't really like obfuscating the paint job that I've done with effects. So I don't mind if the effects are like kind of on the environment, but for me personally, I want to see all of the work I put into painting the suit or the armor or whatever else, and I don't really find it to be super appealing when it's obscured or kind of like muddled by some kind of intense special effect. So that's how I approach it. Obviously, your art is your art. Do it however you want. There's no right or wrong answer, and just like everyone else in the world, when I see really cool special effects like glows and object source lighting and stuff, I'm always in awe of it. And I go, maybe I should do that. And then I go, nah. I'd rather do other things that make me happy and that I really enjoy. Little sparks of electricity off of his hands. Boop, 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 boop. It's one of the things Dallas and I were talking a little bit about, of what is the AMG thing? What do we do that kind of is not necessarily we're the only ones that do it, but it's the thing that somewhat sets us apart or makes it recognizable when you look at a sculpt and say, oh, I think I know who did that. So of course I know everyone's going to say the tactical rock, but I'll be honest, we're far from owning that space. But we were talking about just the special effects and the way that our engineers and our sculptors under Marco and everything have really started to get these amazing little, like even the little lightning bolts on his hands, to all of the crazy, like the lightning that's holding him up, everything. More and more and more we're seeing just that team expand and grow in its understanding of how to do these really cool VFX on miniatures, and so exciting every time they come up with something new. Did we run into design issues with Electro Shocker? Not really. I mean, from a sculpting and concepting standpoint, obviously how do you do the lightning? How do you suspend him? How do you make him more stable? We learned a lot. We always talk about, our goal is to learn from our past and our past projects. And so Storm was kind of our first foray into crazy lightning effects. And we discovered a lot of stuff from working on her in terms of like stability and tolerances and thicknesses, and how can you just make that whole experience better for people and everything else. So that was a really big one. So we, the sculpting team and the engineers definitely knew going in what they wanted to do for Electro to make him work. Shocker kind of took a lot of the things we had learned from Black Bolt and trying to do his little sonic scream effect and just making it even more impressive and awe-inspiring and stuff. So sculpting wise, there were a couple of design challenges to figure out and to overcome, but nothing that really stumped us. And then from the game rules perspective, Electro definitely started in a very strong place, as he does a lot. His kind of like play style is a bit of a debuff centric like fighter, so he did a lot of conditions and had ways to like play off those conditions primarily through shock and such, but kind of being the one to set up the enemy characters for the finishing blow from a different member of the Spider Foes team was the idea, right? All of those characters in that pack that's coming out, Electro, Shocker, Sandman, and Vulture, they're very much designed a little bit with the X-Men philosophy in front and center, which was they needed to operate in a team mentality, right? Obviously, the Sinister Six have to team up to take on Spider-Man because they're incapable of doing so just by themselves. So they have to become greater through the sum of their parts. And so how to accomplish those things and make that come through. Part of that is, and we talk a little bit about this with the X-Men, and the question came up like, why isn't Xavier a higher threat? And similar here, if you create really high threat characters that you have to build around, you lose some of that team aspect, some of that, that group mentality, because the squad gets smaller and one character kind of becomes the focal point of everything, and that's not really the dream of the Sinister. It might be Otto's dream for the Sinister Six, but it's not how the Sinister Six work, right? They're successful so long as they work together, and then eventually how Spider-Man defeats them is that he figures out some way to make them not work in unison. He figures out some way to make them go back to their selfish, singular ways. And so we wanted to make sure that that was really present in playing with the Spider Foes, especially under Doc Ock's leadership and with these new characters coming out, because we assume and believe and want players to have that opportunity to kind of relive their favorite moments from the comics with these characters as the Sinister Six and taking on Spider-Man, and made even better by the Parker Luck Ultimate Encounter, where the Crisis teams get to play the bad guys trying to mess with Peter Parker as they're robbing a Comic-Con convention, and Parker's just trying to take pictures, and now he's got to save people, and so the bad guys have to team up to take on a very iconic version of Spider-Man that we see in the comics, who is powerful enough to handle a bunch of supervillains all at once. So that was all kind of the intention and the idea behind what we were doing with these characters and how we wanted them to function. Long story short, Electro definitely went through a number of revisions to kind of bring his power set into balance, in line with what the game could stand, and what worked well with the rest of the characters and everything else, so that we could really hopefully dial in and deliver that Sinister Six fantasy for the folks that want to take on their friends Web Warriors or whomever in Crisis Protocol. But it does go back to, we did actually play a little bit with Sandman as a 5 threat for the group, but it just didn't quite work. It didn't feel right, like where his power level was sitting with where we wanted him to sit in relation to a lot of other things. It just turned out that, he was much better, much more compelling overall at that lower threat value than he was at the 5 that we kept trying to kind of force him into. So we shifted after a lot of playtesting feedback and internal testing and discussions. And that's how we wound up where we did. But nothing that really broke the bounds of a normal day at the office, as they say. There are certainly other experiences with characters, Apocalypse absolutely being one of them, with so much unique stuff in his kit and so many cool things we'll be talking about this July at Mini Stravaganza. So if you don't know to mark your calendars this July. Final dates to come. We're going to be holding our annual Mini Stravaganza, where we'll be talking about all the cool things, but Apocalypse will be one of the biggest Crisis Protocol discussions. We're going to dive in deep on how he was designed and developed, all of the fun stories about him ruining people's lives and the crazy things that he did in testing, and how poor Ben lost months of sleep over the horseman abilities and all the crazy things I told him I wanted them to do, and how unreasonable I was as a boss because I wanted what I wanted. Yeah. Like I said, you know, the best part about the job is getting to come to work with a incredibly talented group of individuals, but all of whom, you know, their number one goal every day is to be better than they were the day before. And it's not an environment that I've experienced much, or as consistently, at least. You know, I've met a lot of really amazing people and a lot of talented people and folks who pushed me to be better and pushed each other to be better and loved the process of, you know, that journey that we're all on as artists, craftsmen, human beings. I've never really been at a place where that culture is so universal among everyone, and it's so ingrained in people that it's just a given. You know somebody's having a bad day when they're not talking about how there's X, Y, or Z that they want to do better next time, or they can't wait for the next project because they have all these ideas on how to improve. So it really is a wonderful, wonderful place because of that. And we have a lot of fun and are pretty goofy. But I don't know if I'd want to work at a place where I didn't get, you know, before even finishing my coffee, Teams calls from Josh yelling at me about X, Y, or Z thing that he can't believe that, you know, he missed or we missed, and we better go back and we better fix it immediately, or otherwise we'll be the laughing stock of the entire Marvel community. And how could we even do this? How could we call ourselves, you know, fans and lovers of the comics when we missed this thing? And every time I'm like, you know, your reaction is a little extreme, Josh, but I can't disagree with the content of your message. So let's figure out what to do here. Let's go back and adjust or fix it for next time. All right. 2 minutes to spare. Bam, I'm back, baby.
You really killed it.
I did. I electrified it. All right, so there you go. So this is our shocker, all done but the base for the most part. There might be a little cleanup to do, but this boy's ready for the tabletop. He's got lightning and everything. Ba-zow! All right, well, thank you so much for joining me on my first one back in a few months. Hope to see you next Tuesday as well, 1 p.m. Pacific. And of course, tune in tomorrow. I believe Dallas Kemp will be back. He was on the mend last we talked to him earlier, and he was in the chat. So he'll be doing a Sandman, and I think he's doing a special diorama of the Sandman versus Spider-Man. So it's going to be it's going to be wild. He's got a wild plan. You should show up for it, even if he didn't have that plan. Now I've put it into the world, so he's got to do it. Again,
I don't think that's what he's doing. I think you're conflating two things.
I saw chats. I have it on record. I will go pull it up later.
Oh,
I'll be like, this is what you said. Now you have to do it. But he's going to be painting Sandman tomorrow. Be sure to tune in for that. And of course, I'll see you again next week. Thank you so much for joining me. Till then, be good to each other, and goodbye.